So Nate, here we are again, working on our conversations around how we think salespeople should be looking at their role, looking at sales, looking at what they're doing every day. So I appreciate you taking some time again to jump into these deep, nerdy sales conversations.
Yeah, I love it. Let's keep going.
Okay, so you know, I think where we want to go today is talking about that discovery process and where we get towards the end of that where we think we're a good fit, we see there's some alignment there, but we really need to take it to another level, right, and really understand if our product, our service is of a really good fit, and what that means for the organization. So you have a way of looking at that. You have a way of doing that where you've added that to your processes and membrane. So I kind of like to just let you talk about the whys, if you will.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about and look to figure out in our sales conversations at Membrane is we call them the three W's: the why change, why now, and why us. And the first one, and one of the biggest ones that I really like to dig into with the customer, is figuring out why change and why does it make sense for them to make a change at this point in time, right? Why now? Um,
Which really, I'm going to interrupt you.
mhm,
Which really, which I didn't want to do, but what what really that does is get that customer to see that you're not fully committed to doing a presentation, doing a demo, doing a proposal.
mhm,
You're not ready yet.
right.
You aren't, and they aren't,
Yep.
or they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, mindset thing, I'm in a SaaS-based business, so it is not uncommon. We get a demo request, and the very first thing is, 5-minute quick introduction on the company and our history. I'm going to do real quick understand what it is that you're looking for, and then I'm going to spend the rest of the time on that hour-long call doing a demo. And stab me in the eye with a dull pencil. Like I just hate that whole approach. Forgive me to anybody that's out there doing that approach, but please consider something different. My
Yeah,
whole
please.
thing and my mindset when I go into those calls is I see that I have a demo request that comes in on my calendar from someone who visited our website, and the very first thought is, I wonder if I can get to the second call or even the third call without ever even having to show them the tool itself. Like
Hmm.
that's my mentality is, can I have a conversation that is enough about them and enough about discovering what's important in their world and what they're looking for and determining if we're the right fit and are we a good solution, that I get to the end of that call and we say, hey, the next most logical step is either for us to dig in further in this conversation, or to I'll take what we've talked about over the last hour and I'll start connecting the dots, and I'll put a demo together where we'll go through the tool in how it makes sense in your world, not just me saying, hey, here's all the cool features and benefits that we have and everything else, but actually putting it together in a comprehensive way that helps them to connect the dots on how it helps them to achieve the business objective that they have.
So you're taking the complexity of your tool and putting that aside to figure out what it is that's important to that prospect, what's important that they're going to need. They're going to need to see how it works,
Mm-hmm.
and delivering that without showing them every bell and whistle, or worse, showing them the bells and whistles that they don't care about,
Right.
that confuse them.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's the first W.
Yeah. And so the why change, and that's probably the biggest of the W's, right? I mean, understanding why it is that they need to make a change. And we talked a little bit about understanding the organizational change component as well. And really that comes into play at that point, is really understanding, okay, have you looked into this type of a solution in the past? And if you have, what prevented you from actually making a decision at that point? Sometimes they'll say we didn't find the right tool, which helps me to understand, you may or may not know exactly what it is that you're looking for. So sometimes my role as a salesperson is helping them to figure out what are they actually looking for. Because sometimes it's, hey, we need a new CRM, and people are like, okay, cool, we'll go start looking at the CRMs before they actually figure out what do they actually need that CRM to do.
Right. So it's almost like when whoever had that idea, who was in the room,
Mm-hmm.
right? And why did we decide that this is something that we need? You're almost taking them back in time,
Mm-hmm.
getting them to start to think about those things. And then I would bet, I know in my world it happens, not really, we never really talked about why. We just thought it was time,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's all right. Well, let's dig into that a little bit.
Yep.
And, then you're again slowing down to really help that person, that company start to figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
Which puts and this is where salespeople I think sometimes get afraid, is that that could lead down a path where it's like, yeah, we're not ready,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah, this isn't a good fit,
Yep.
or what we're doing is fine for right now.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the only thing there is how fast can I figure that out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if that's the answer, I want to know as quickly as possible
Yep. Yeah.
without throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yep. Well, and sometimes you can help them to figure that out. Sometimes they need someone that has
Exactly.
the experience, the knowledge, and the ability to ask them the right questions for them to figure out either I'm not ready or I'm ready, but what I needed was someone who could help me figure out what it was I really needed and had the honesty and the integrity and the character to say, we're not the right fit. Here's five other options that can do what it is that you're looking for, but we're not the right ones. Or no, we are the right ones. And I'm glad we're having this conversation because here's all the reasons that we can help you to solve that challenge that you're looking for. But I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations and asked, essentially what has brought you to this point. And it's, we just, we figured we needed something.
Yeah, it's a to me that's where the fun can begin
Mm-hmm.
from a sales role. Is now we get to play detective, we get to use the experience we have, we get to use the knowledge of our product to in a way that's helpful, not just pushy.
Right.
So being able to, it doesn't, and I don't think it matters, even if we have a commodity that everybody understands what it is, or it's viewed as a commodity,
Mm-hmm.
it's still the salesperson's responsibility to say, hey, you know what? Our three competitors were almost identical, right? So
Mm-hmm.
97% of what we do, or 98% of what we do, exactly the same. Can we talk about that 2%
Mm-hmm.
that makes us different, right? And then now you're going to dive into figuring that out, if what you do, if it is a good match.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the risk that the salespeople are afraid of,
Yep.
right? And sales managers, right? They're like, let's not go down that path because that's not good for us. Well, if you sell something and it doesn't work, man, to me that's short sighted.
Yeah. And if we go back a conversation, actually two conversations, if you're qualifying the right opportunities into the pipeline, a good majority of the time, those conversations should lead to either right fit customer, wrong time, which you can't always help, or right fit customer, right time, and you keep moving forward. Because sometimes there is a scenario that you get into where you're figuring out that change and you start getting into the organizational change and the change management process. And have they considered all the other areas of the business that this change is actually going to affect? And you get to a point where, as a salesperson, you usually figure it out earlier in the conversation than the customer does, but you still have to kind of get them to that point. But
Right.
you figure out very early on, ooh, they haven't actually thought through all the moving parts of this type of a decision. And there's a reason they've gone through this process 3, 4, 5 times and come to no decision being the decision at the end. And it's because when they got towards the end of their process was when they brought everybody else in. So if I
Right.
can figure that out on the front end and help start getting those other individuals involved, not from what's the best way to phrase this? Not from a sleazy sales technique of, hey, who else is involved in this sale so I can get them involved and get their yes right away. But who else is involved in this project, in this process? Who else is going to be affected so we can figure out if it's a good fit for them as well so that everybody's happy moving forward.
Well, and I always try to give like something tangible that people can go try.
Mm-hmm.
So in where you are in the process, what you just described, to me, the question that the salesperson can ask is, who else cares about this? Who else is going to be impacted by this
Mm-hmm.
within the organization? And if that person is of the right level in the organization who's making those kinds of decisions, they're used to being collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so IT's going to be involved. Marketing's going to want to have some input. So getting all of those people involved is going to help you know if now is the right time or not. It's going to help bring everybody through, and then it becomes a logistics things.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we do this, Mr. Prospect? What's the best way to get everybody together, or do I need to do this individually, or right? And you have
Yep.
a fairly complex piece, and I know you did that with one of our clients where you just got them all together and got them at the same place, like here's what we're looking at, here's all of these pieces, and then everybody was able to throw in their 2 cents, if you will, and their concerns.
Mm-hmm.
But you weren't afraid to go down that path.
No, and I think sometimes it can be hard if you're a junior salesperson and you don't understand all the moving parts. But I think once you've been through it, even once or twice, I don't think you have to have gone through it a ton to know, oh, this person might be involved, that person might be involved. And every time you do a project, I don't care what industry you're in, what you're selling, every time you do a project and there's another department or another person involved, that should go on your mental checklist of, hey, I can provide value to the customer by saying, you know what, in previous experience, I'm CRM, so I'll talk to CRM, but in my past experiences, this has a tendency to affect the IT department. This has a tendency to involve the marketing team. This has a tendency to involve sometimes the customer success team. Who else on your team do you see that may want to have some understanding of what the system actually is and have some input into the direction that you're going with it? And
And
then I
that's going
can,
to elevate that prospect in everybody else's mind too.
yep.
It's going to help that person within their own organization, you know, be collaborative,
Mm-hmm.
to speak to a culture that has a requirement of like getting everybody to work together and teamwork.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
and you're facilitating that as a salesperson.
Right. And the more I can help to facilitate that as a person, the more value I have to that organization from that consultative selling perspective, from that, hey, we want to have conversations with that salesperson again because they're not just in it to make a sale, they're in it to help us actually be better at our day to day.
Which is what we keep coming back to, is helping that prospect and that customer.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the first W of why change,
Yep.
and we the second one is why now.
Right.
You want to share the third?
Yeah. So the third, I usually don't speak about directly, but the third one is why us. And it's
Mm-hmm.
really figuring out how do we help the customer to solve for their business challenge in the time frame that they need to actually do it. And that was something, I don't know if we were planning on having a separate conversation around, but understanding that time frame is a big thing that I see missed a lot of times. And understanding from the customer, hey, when do you actually need to have this solution in place? And then helping to work backwards one, from a sales perspective, it can help to create urgency, but there's a lot of times where the customer doesn't know all the moving parts involved. If you're in manufacturing, how long it takes to actually manufacture the product or the equipment or whatever it is, testing time, getting things in place, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of times where
Supply chain.
supply chain issue, yeah, especially right now, supply chain issues, um, and helping to be that sounding board and that voice for the customer to say, hey, I'm not looking to push you necessarily, but when are you looking to actually have something in place? I've had customers that are like, "Oh, we want to have something in place within the next 2 weeks." And I'm going,
Great.
"Onboarding for us is 6 to 8 weeks." Like, and that's not including you having time to really stress test things and make sure that, like, do we want to maybe be more realistic with that, or like what are we actually talking about?
Right, because we have to be able to tell them at that moment, right? We're setting this up to fail.
Yep.
It's not going to work logistically on our end. It's not going to work logistically on your side because these two people haven't seen it, right? And
Yep.
then, but in that point, sometimes you salesperson can fall on their sword, if you will. It's like, look, maybe I didn't explain this earlier,
Mhm.
but this is a complex piece of software. This is a complex service. We need X amount of time. Um, and you have to we have to kind of rejigger those expectations, or just say, hey, if that's a really hard thing that you have to have it by that hard date, then we can't help you,
Mhm.
without telling them to go pound sand, right? We just have to be the voice of reason,
Yep.
um, which is often a challenge.
Mhm.
So we got a couple of minutes. Let's talk about that technique, because I think that's something that people can walk through. I've used it in my career. Um, can we talk about the timeline component and how you use it to really be helpful?
Mhm.
Because I know some people use it to as a way to beat up a customer. Um, so can you share your thoughts on that approach at a high level?
Yeah, I mean, at a high level, I've worked in construction. I've worked in from a sales perspective. I've worked selling construction. I've worked selling packaging equipment. I've worked selling SaaS solutions, um, and these things have come into play at each level. But again, it goes back to one, kind of helping with expectations of the customer and really getting their understanding. They probably haven't bought unless you have a commodity, they probably haven't bought what it is that you're selling more than a handful of times, maybe two handfuls of times. But it's not likely, especially if you're selling um, anything that has a really high dollar value, that they're buying it over and over and over again. So being that resource to be able to say, okay, when would you be looking to actually have a solution in place, and have them give you a date, and then work that process backwards in your mind and build in a little bit of buffer time. Like with CRM, for instance, I always say, okay, after your sales team is trained, you're probably going to want at least 2 weeks of them really in the system, engaging with the system, playing around with the system to work out kinks and bugs and this, that, and the other, before you really are truly going live with the system. You don't want to go live with a software that the team has never really gotten to play around with, and they're live out in the field. So there's always a 2 week buffer there. Then you've got 6 to 8 weeks, typically 8 weeks from an onboarding perspective. And so there we've just worked backwards 10 weeks within the time frame. We're at 2.5 months. Then we look at, after we receive a PO, we have to figure out how to actually get you into our onboarding schedule. And so there's a buffer there depending on the time of year and how many customers we've brought in the month before. And that time varies, but I'll share that with the customer. And then it's okay. So in order to go live by July 1st, we'll say, just based on the fact that we're in April right now, if I'm doing my calculations correct, um, we would be looking at a decision needed to be made by X date. And the
And
customer can
sometimes
either
that's
go,
behind us.
yeah. And sometimes that's, we should have made a decision 3 weeks ago. So where are you willing to give? What can we do differently? How can we be flexible and work together? Or you can kind of do that in the SaaS world. When I was in packaging or in construction, there were hard dates that it was, hey, my metal fabricator is going to take 6 weeks to fabricate this. It takes another week to put it on a truck on a flatbed and drive it all the way across the country to be at your location. That's a hard and fast thing. We're not going to be able to do it in that time frame. So can we either reset the expectation, or I'm going to have to politely bow out because we can't meet the time frame that you're looking for.
Right. And that's the uncomfortable conversation
Mm-hmm.
that needs to happen, and needs to, happen sooner than later as you're moving through your W's, right?
Yep.
It's all through the discovery process. We're looking for that reason that the opportunity won't close.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking to figure that out so either we can deal with it or exit. We can fix it or exit. And the sooner we do that, the better off for them, the better off for us, because as salespeople, the greatest commodity that we have, the thing of the most value, is our time.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're spending time on things that will never go anywhere, that's just going to spin, um, we're wasting that valuable resource.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think what we've been talking about through these last couple of conversations is about being willing to have a healthy dose of skepticism
Mm-hmm.
around an opportunity, and that you don't necessarily need to make that prospect feel that, but you have to bring that skepticism to the table to be sure that you're going slow, that you're really digging into these things. What could go wrong? We want to understand, why we're going to be successful. We want to understand how we're going to be successful. We want to understand how they're going to make a decision, right, and when.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to do all this stuff before we give them a proposal,
Yep.
before we give them the quote,
Yep.
right? So this last bit that I kind of want to hit is that scorecard, that gate, because it sets up our next conversation
Yep.
around optimizing this whole process. So I don't know very many salespeople. I don't know of any salespeople, frankly, that get paid a dollar amount for every proposal that they write. Right? Have you ever heard of somebody getting paid for writing a proposal?
Sadly, yes.
No shit, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know a couple of companies out there that they have their KPIs set up with bonuses based off of activity-based objectives that, yeah, I don't fully understand it from but
Wow.
yeah, I've seen
Okay.
it.
So I'll stand correct. I still haven't heard of them, but we're going to have another conversation offline about
Uh-huh.
that. But that's how I've always looked at it. I don't want to do a proposal unless I know I have a reasonably good chance of winning. And to
Yep.
know have a reasonably good chance of winning is to do proper discovery.
Yep.
So we put another gate there with our processes as to, do they have certain criteria? And we have a way of figuring that out and measuring it. But we know, like in my business, if we don't score a certain level on our scorecard, then the likelihood of us winning an opportunity drops by 40%.
Mm.
So if we don't hit our scorecard to be green and we still do a proposal, we're wasting time, and we might have a reason for that. I mean, if we're strategically doing it for another reason, that's different. But we know that we're probably not going to win. So
Mhm.
why are we doing it?
Right.
Well, there's a strategic reason. Okay, if that's a good enough reason, then we go ahead with it. But we still have to be careful about what we put on the street, because every time you put a number on the street, you got to assume everybody knows about it.
Yep.
So, can you talk about the philosophy, about that scorecard and gating that before the reason why we do that, so we have the right data to go backwards?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, one of the most valuable things, I don't care if you're a salesperson or anybody else, your customers, one of the most valuable things they have is their time. So, again, if I can help a customer to figure out that we're not the right fit, we're not the right solution, and we shouldn't be spending time from a selling perspective on that, and I can give them time back, that is rewarding
For
for
everybody.
both sides, right? So when I can build out a scorecard, and I can use that scorecard based off of historical data, based off of key points that we need to know and we need to understand from the customer. And I can use that to figure out go, no go decision. That's huge for both myself and for the customer to figure out if we're the right fit moving forward. And I mean, one of the things that I kind of cheat a little bit, I guess you could say it's cheating. I like to say to the customer, hey, can you do me a favor? I want to make sure that this project, this solution, whatever it is as successful as it possibly can be. But in order to do that, I need to try to poke holes in the solution that we've created. Can you help me poke holes here as far as why it wouldn't work so that we can either figure out how to make it work, or we can figure out, no, that hole's big and it's only going to get bigger. And I'll ask them that question. And I can't tell you how many times there's like, we're virtual, but it feels like we all of a sudden both move and we're on the same side of the table looking at the problem together, going, yeah, this won't work and that won't work. And then we can help try to solve that together. And that is one of my scorecard elements for, are we going to move forward? Because if you as a customer don't see that as a good thing, if you put up resistance to that and all of a sudden you're like, we're probably not the right fit for each other, if you're not willing to look at it objectively and say, yeah, here's reasons it would or wouldn't work, and share those reasons openly.
No, that's a incredibly powerful question, and you're kind of in the 11th hour, but it really, as you said, as soon as you said that, it's like, wow, that's a shift, and it really is a shift to the same side of the table. We're looking at the problem from the same perspective, right? And that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you become a trusted advisor. You're shoulder to shoulder looking at the problem in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives us great information about why we win and why we lose. And then we can take that data all the way back to marketing and the other funnels that
Mm-hmm.
are created. And I'd love to land it right there. And the next time we get together, sort of a teaser, folks, that we're going to talk about how all of the qualification and discovery processes and the skepticism and finding the compelling reasons and poking holes in the solution that was created, how that really helps us get better and go faster because we stop putting crap in our pipelines. We stop even talking to people that aren't a good fit. If we do it really, really well and we get everybody involved, operations, manufacturing, marketing, sales, get them all in the same room, and we start talking about this data that we have, the the value that comes out of that is immense. And Membrane is the tool that provides us with that data if we tee it up right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to land it there, and I look forward to that next conversation where we can really start, because that's really about, it's going to help marketing, it's going to help everybody in that organization, and that CEO should be helping facilitate those conversations
Yep.
and allow that to make sure that that's happening, because everybody will win and everybody will go faster. So
Yep.
Nate, thank you again. Appreciate the time and the mental energy that goes into this.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.